Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our first marketing functional conversation and AMA. Myself, Christina, and a team have been working on this forum as a way of addressing one of the CMO work streams that came out of our employee satisfaction survey, where there was a desire for everyone within marketing to be able to understand each other's functions and what are the teams doing. Also, how can you engage with those teams, and just what their scope was. And so Christina's providing some links to the handbook page as well as to our Epic, where we've been tracking all of this work. And so today is our first presentation of what we called the marketing functional conversation. So it's meant to be a mini group conversation for teams to present themselves and really give a high-level overview, be able to provide some resources, and then come in to this forum and be able to answer questions if there's further discussion points or more information that all of you want. So the two of us are the first ones to go. So we have all of our slides and our videos there in the document. And so I will stop talking and hopefully open it up to some questions from the group.
I would actually love to learn more about like what might be some impactful research that's shown up in the past that has been maybe like especially useful to GitLab, or something that you feel that your team did that was like, this was a cool moment for us and this is how it sort of moved the needle on something. Because when I think about what y'all are doing, I'm like, this is really intriguing, but I don't know anything about this. So I'd love to sort of hear something that was like a big win maybe in this past year.
And is that for me or for both of us? Or
that's for I'm on the community relations team. I'm on Christina's team.
Okay.
But for industry and analyst relations,
Sure.
for you and your team.
I would say one of our biggest wins in the last year was the update to the TEI calculator that we worked on with Forrester. And that is an online calculator that allows customers or prospects, just anybody interested in GitLab, to answer a series of questions and be able to be walked through a process to see what their return on investment and what their savings would be. And they can, I can put a link into that calculator here in the document after the meeting, but it allows them to kind of change different parameters and explore different options. Like if I put it across a whole team, if I put it across just a smaller group, what can I be looking at? What are the savings that I could see? And I think having that calculator, we had an initial version that was really just about the basic DevOps platform, and we updated it with the security features of Ultimate and really saw additional savings. And I feel it'll be so helpful to be able to have that out there, not only externally, but internally, because I think it helps to really calibrate everybody's expectations of really what the value proposition is of the platform and of the platform with security.
That's a really, really cool tool. I had no idea that existed. So that's really, I know I'm just saying really cool, but I don't have the words for it. That's neato. I like it.
Well, great. Yeah. Somebody already put the link in there for me. Thank you so much. But yeah, and I would also say some of the other upcoming maybe highlights that we can talk about is that we are working with Gartner and Forrester. They are doing some Magic Quadrants and waves specifically on DevOps. They've never done that before. This is the first year for that coverage. And so we're really excited to participate in that and hopefully do really, really well. We will do really, really well. I'm willing it into being. We are the best. But yeah, we're excited about that. And those should publish in the summer. So something to look forward from the team. And we would be happy to provide updates here or just in our channels. If you look at our presentation, we have our Analyst Relations channel where we make research of interest and different things available to the larger group, as well as updates on things like that. Cool. I think, Brian, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just another a question for analyst relations. So everything I know about analyst relations, I learned from Gabby. And one of the things that I found really helpful when she was teaching me what analyst relations is and does is understanding the vocabulary, right? She helped me understand the difference between an inquiry and a briefing, and all the different vocabulary you'll use to talk about how you calculate ROI and things like that. And I wonder, do you all have like a glossary of AR terms that we could access to kind of bone up on the vocab? Or B, would you consider like making such a thing? Just because I know that was super helpful for me getting trained, getting skilled up. So I don't know if that's on the radar or if it already exists, but I'd love to have access to it.
I think the place to start would be our handbook page. I believe a good deal of those terms in the descriptions of the difference between an inquiry, a briefing, what an advisory entails. I also put some of that information into the deck. But if there's terms that you feel that you're familiar with that other folks may just not have the definition of, that we don't have, I would say just open up an issue against our handbook page. We're happy to add to it and build it out.
This looks great. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, let's go to Chris. I think you have the next question.
Yeah. Hey, Laura, nice to meet you. Thanks for hosting the first session. I had some question about just change in community sentiment in terms of the free SaaS changes that we've had. So one of the things that I've wondered about is just sort of like, obviously people are unhappy with it, but long term, what do we think that this means in terms of for GitLab? So yeah, I was just curious as to what we've seen and whether or not it's impacted the number of open source contributions that we've had.
I can start and then I'll hand it over to Brian and Christos and anyone else from the team. So I think the biggest change that we've seen is that we've had a pretty dramatic increase in applications to our open source program. And that's really exciting because we've thought ahead in this case and been able to welcome a lot of those projects that qualify into our program. Brian, do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I'm not sure what, I mean, that's the long and short. We've seen a huge dramatic increase. Chris, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, so my question is, how do our changes in our free SaaS tier affect our community? And the second part of this is, how does that change the number of open source merge requests to GitLab itself in terms of like community contributions? Yeah. So, hey, that's awesome that the open source contribution, you're getting a lot more applications. It's really great, but like still, that's one part of the puzzle for the overall picture of what's happening, right? So I'm just curious as to how it's actually impacting the larger community.
Yeah. So it depends on how you define community in this sense. There's a difference between open source projects, open source contributions on GitLab, i.e. open source projects that are using GitLab to foster communities and build projects. And we've seen those numbers increase dramatically. As far as open source contributions to GitLab as an open source project, that's more Christos's bailiwick than mine. So I think you might be asking sort of two different questions or about two different functions of our team.
Yeah, I see them as two different questions. So do you see the increase in applicants to the open source program being a metric that there actually is more open source on GitLab, or it's just that with the changes, now we have more applications to the open source program?
So you're talking about when you say more open source, like as a percentage of overall projects on GitLab, has the percentage of that are open source as opposed to conventionally licensed changed dramatically?
I wouldn't think about it from a percentage basis because then you have multiple variables. I'm just saying, like, before the free SaaS changes, we had 10,000 open source projects. Now we have 20,000, I'm just curious as to what the trajectory is.
Yeah, I can show you I can pull the metrics for you. I mean, it's been an exponential increase in applications. I mean, where we were processing, a few a week, we were processing, dozens per week, right? I mean, that's just being very general about it, but we're talking a major increase in the amount of applications. And what that's done is it has forced us to make a lot of improvements on our end. For example, Christina led a really important efficiency project that allowed us to streamline and automate our applications and renewals process. That would the switch from the free tier changes and the influx of applicants that we received as a result of those changes, we wouldn't have been able to handle that deluge without the automations that we put in place. So it really forced us to up our game a little bit too.
That's awesome. How have we seen the change in contributions? So the second part of the question, how has the change in contributions to the actual GitLab project changed over time? So like what's our 12-year rolling average?
Sure.
Just other metrics.
So hi, thanks for the question. So we've seen seeing some decrease in the number of contributions, which we cannot relate though into the changes necessarily, because we managed to spin up, thanks to Litik, the contributor success team, hack, let's say, by forking and creating a GitLab community fork, which allow people to not use their personal namespace CI/CD minutes. So that aside, due to the change, we haven't seen a lot of change in the number of contributions, even though we see a decline overall in our contributors on a monthly basis.
Awesome. Thank you for the feedback and for explaining this to me, and great work on all the stuff that y'all are doing.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add and kind of plug here is that, we understand the community sentiment around these changes has been negative. You can see that in any kind of discussion that's popped up about the changes that we've made to the free tier. Christos pointed out the community fork as one of the things that we've done from like an operational perspective to reduce some of the friction that these changes have caused and remove them from the contributor workflow. Another area where we focused is leading organizations, which is an effort to increase the number of open source contributions that are coming from, primarily GitLab customers or organizations that are using GitLab, within their infrastructure. And so that's another kind of, way that we're approaching this problem of, continuing to grow our community as, maybe there's fewer and fewer people using GitLab for free. And so we're well aware of kind of this issues that you pointed out, Chris, and there's some stuff that we're doing to work on that, like this community fork and like leading organizations.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback, John. I'm not trying to point out issues. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. And when you have a robust platform like GitHub, which is free, then that will create like long-term trajectories. So thanks for the feedback and what you're trying to do, and awesome work on handling this. Thank you.
Yeah, and Chris, just to follow up, I told you I'd get you some metrics. I don't want to belabor this, but while John was speaking, I was able to pull them. So just for some context, before we implemented the free SaaS user changes, we were processing about 0.7 applications per day for the over the course of a month, calculated, and that increased to 8.7 per day after the changes were implemented, right? Or after they were announced, rather. So you're talking like an 8-fold increase in applications monthly for open source projects.
Awesome. Yeah, Brian, I think, what Chris was, trying to get at is, applications to the program can be driven by this change, but people prior to these changes may have just been starting projects and we weren't aware of those. And so I think what Christopher was trying to get at is, what is the net total of open source, prior to these changes and then after these changes? I don't think applications necessarily tells that story.
Gotcha.
All right, great topic. I've got the next question. So for the Laura, for your team,
Yes.
and thanks, Ryan, for already answering, but for the sake of the recording, I'm working on an investor day with Jack Andrews and B Rob. So just curious to know how to involve y'all. Want to be sure we've got the right folks. This is our first time we're gonna be hosting at NASDAQ, so super excited to get that kicked off with that team. Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Ryan kind of gave our answer fully in the doc, which is basically what we've done to date on the quarterly earnings calls, as well as the investor presentation, is that we usually are leveraging a Gartner and or Forrester quote within those decks. So we work with the analyst firms to get those approved and make sure that they are used in the way that they were intended and that everything is signed off. So other than that, in terms of our analyst population, they don't really fit into the financial analyst ecosystem, I think, that you would see kind of Jack and B Rob normally engaging with and talking to, like much more of your Wall Street firms that are kind of gauging us from that financial perspective. But would be very interested to kind of see what the content of the day is looking like and what opportunities there might be. I think as Ryan was saying here, there could be a opportunity for inclusion of the analysts from a Gartner, Forrester, IDC perspective, but we just, it depends on what topics and what really the overall theme is of the day. If it's truly focused at that population, it may not make sense to bring in like a Gartner analyst, for example, because they're not really going to be speaking to the same types of topics with the same depth that like your financial team would. But I would say, yeah, let's connect, Leslie, and let's kind of talk about it and see if there's anything there and just stay aligned. But I think we would be engaged in terms of making sure whatever materials you're putting together or any industry analyst content that you would want to support, that event, that we would definitely be working with you on that.
Yeah, awesome. And don't worry, Ryan, I know that if I need to have an analyst there, I'll be paying for it.
I know, I even though he's on mute, I could hear it too. So
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Thank you.
Or also, if we want to speak to an analyst, we have to ask Ryan. I learned that one too. Great team to work with. Really.
Always ask Ryan. Okay.
Support.
Let's go to the next one.
I think, is that you again, Chris?
Yeah, it's me again. Hey, this question is actually more for Sam. So I have noticed that we've moved from, I don't want to call it this, but this is the way that I've always seen it. And you can correct me if my understanding of things is wrong, but we had product-led growth, this big open source community, you capture a chunk of it, and then they naturally expand, right? And so it seems like over here it answers B and C in terms of community and as a sales driver for us long-term and how that impacts our business strategy, that like moving to more of an enterprise DevSecOps enterprise platform, right? And then some of these communities just going to GitHub, right? So I'm just curious as to how, so like just to sort of summarize, used to have like the land and expand motion with the open source, people on the free SaaS platform, and actually scale up, product-led growth, and then moving more to enterprise DevSecOps platform, right? How does that actually impact like our product-led growth numbers in terms of, and what are we, I guess we're too early to see numbers for this, but I'm just curious as to like what our strategy for this is.
I'll take a pass. And I apologize if there's loud noises. I have a contractor at my house right now, so they're actively drilling directly above my head. So in terms of, there's a few elements there, Christopher, but I think from a, like if we take a step back, like, yes, we're gonna have some community or open source contributors, maybe not contribute to GitLab, but I think there's also an opportunity for us to help our customers contribute to GitLab and improve their own product experience, and that being a unique differentiator for GitLab and a selling point for us. And at the end of the day, we're also still going to have a free product. We're just going to limit it specifically for private namespaces. So businesses that are using GitLab. So public namespaces on GitLab.com will not have a user limit. They get the same experience that they get today. So the goal is that, we're incentivizing businesses to make a purchasing decision and hopefully becoming a customer of GitLab, but that we're still allowing, people in public namespaces to, contribute as they do today.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that really answers the question, so we can kind of skip over mine as well, but just the emphasis on, DevSecOps enterprise platform versus kind of the individual creative projects, I think is where we're at, and welcoming in those communities of value that we do want to nurture.
Okay, I think Amanda, you had the next one.
Yep. So we are planning on being at 4 Gartner shows, which is super exciting for this fiscal year. And I was just wanting to hear more about how the corporate events team can better align with the AR team on these 4 shows. They're all around the world. And additionally, on my next point was that we have also purchased theater sessions. So is that more of like we should be engaging with Gartner analysts to be doing a joint speaking session with us, or should it be a GitLab speaker going to be speaking at these events?
I think it depends, and I've tried to kind of put that in there. I think it really is about the theme of the show and what are we kind of making our message and our purpose and what we are presenting, I would say, through our sponsorship at the show. Like, are we focusing on, for example, Ultimate or something like that? Again, we can look for either community speakers, we could engage with the customer advocacy team about speakers there as well. I am not 100% familiar, and maybe Leslie, you know more about this, about if at the Gartner shows you can actually engage the analyst to come and speak at your session, or what that looks like if that has to be an additional paid for thing, or if that's something they actually do. But I think it really needs to start with what themes or what topics are we wanting to bring to the show? Like what is our theme of these speaking events, for example? And then we can go, okay, is that best for a community speaker? Is that best for a customer? Should we get some type of analyst or industry expert? And then what can we or can't we do within the parameters of what Gartner will let us do at that show? So I think just getting together and really working through these 4 events and making sure that we're aligned and we know not only what your plans are, but then how we support you with those, and getting you in touch with the right, either through us or through other teams, within product marketing or cross marketing as well, is the best path.
Yeah, and Amanda's got a call set up with Diane and a few other folks next week just to kick off that conversation. But curious though, Laura, in your experience, would it make more sense to speak with with a Gartner analyst at a Gartner show, or should we be having our own voice at these shows?
I think it should be our own voice, but that's just my take on it. I'm happy to kind of bring that perspective. If you maybe want to loop me into that conversation, I'm happy to be engaged with that as well. It really just depends. Are we also, what level are we going at in terms of our sponsorship? How big of a splash do you want to make? Say it's show A versus
they want millions and millions, and we did not.
I know. I know. So that's where I'm hedging a little bit, because it really depends. So that's where I would say I think we need to determine what is our priority and what is our message theme and our goal with the show. What are we trying to accomplish? And then I think everything else will naturally kind of come together from that.
Thank you.
If that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, I think we're at time. Christina, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out Michael and Nikki. Thanks for your help along the way. We appreciate Nikki joining as well, and from the enablement side. So thank you for all the feedback and help. And then we're going to have these every Thursday. So please join in. I was just about to link the sheet. I think there's a dozen at least or so teams that need to go through. So we'll keep doing these on Thursday until we make our way through all of the teams. And I'll post the recording here afterwards. So we hope you thought it was valuable. And if you have feedback, please go ahead and put it in the epic, because we'll of course iterate as we go.
Of course. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the great questions. Really appreciate it.